Matt, can you hear me?
I hear you.
How are you, my friend? Well, we lost you.
I was hearing you, then I cut you off.
All right. So, how are you doing?
Good.
Good.
How about you?
I just had to run over to the printer and grab your report up there. So it's welcome everybody to lunch with Lumbermen with Matt Lehman from Lehman's Lumber Guide, rocking it in North Carolina. It's great to see you without a background of hills, man. I don't know if that's great for you or not.
But it is when I'm there and enjoying it. It's not when you're out walking in it. It's not too much fun. But
I got you. Well, this is Ashley from Materials Exchange. So Matt, lots to talk about today. I had a couple of things down here. So let's bring up the 2x4 composite. Without getting too confusing with anybody, there's a good bite going on in the market right now of buying. And I think Matt's been talking about this for a while. And these always take a bit to transpire. Matt, one thing that's hard for people to understand sometimes outside of the industry and even inside of the industry sometimes when we're talking about a forward market being futures and a spot market being cash, right?
Right.
And when we talk about that, we look at the big difference between what are both of them doing, because right now the futures market, which I haven't looked in a while, is limit up again and has a pool of buyers, and it's a big premium to the cash market. The cash market printed Wednesday around 350, and I heard one of the big mills just sold it for, this is just what I heard. I heard it sold at 413.
Yeah, the low guy on the street this morning was 413, 414. I think that was West Fraser.
So what that means generally is if that's $100 to Chicago, just guessing, that's about a 513, right? And then once you look at where futures is trading at, and I believe that that's a significant premium right now.
Look at the mini contract, which is what everybody's rolling into. It's even higher. It's up $55 today.
So what generally happens is, and a friend of mine, Greg, was telling me this morning, he said, Ashley, he goes, sometime between now and March 15th. David, good to see you. David Stalkop just said, good to see you guys. Sometime between now and March 15th, futures will be a discount to cash. Now, how's that going to happen? It can happen one of two ways, right, Matt? Either the cash is going to go up, which it seems to be doing today, or the futures is going to go down, or a combination of both. But the big thing to remember here is that big divergence in the middle. That gap is going to close one way or another. I think we saw last night as I was sitting in my couch looking at Twitter and saw that Canfor was closing one of their mills and was temporarily shutting down one of their big ones. Whenever supply starts coming off at a time when people, even though we have demand down a little bit, it gets people to think again as this comes off. Everybody was anticipating something like this happening, but when it does happen, it's always different because people are running their inventories leaner. Does that make sense, Matt? After I've talked about that.
Right. Yep.
So
when it gets cheap.
Yeah. So where we're at right now is spruce is moving pretty good, and that seems to be the play right now. I know I call around and look at all the other species and grades and all that. Spruce seems to be the rallying item right now. Not to say I'm not as heavily involved in pine. OSB seems to still be getting some orders, but hasn't really done a big move yet at all. But anyway, we're seeing a buy in spruce right now. So Matt, I started out there. What's your thought going into this week or in the middle of this week?
Well, fundamentally you got to look at what's going on and why are these things happening? Why is futures has been at a $60 premium, $90 premium to cash for like a month now, and everybody's doing the basis trade thinking it was going to work. And you buy cash, sell futures, and next thing you know, futures is outrunning cash even further, and so the basis trades are just hard to get those working too. But you got to think about the reason why that's going on. If you look at, I think a couple things are happening. There's a more favorable feeling about the economy and interest rates not necessarily peaking, but not going up, and maybe just a couple of 25 basis points, maybe 2 or 3 more times. I'm hearing lots of conversations from people all over the country that their builders are coming out of the woodwork with plans, that the market's definitely undersupplied, and the builders are feeling better about especially about Q2 prospects, but they're making the plans now for that. So, we're just a couple months ahead of the curve, which is, we talk about the supply cycle and demand cycle, and we're right now we're in the supply cycle, the preparation cycle actually, and there were 3 major contractor yards that were out buying it for the last 3 days, just buying from brokers, from mills, anybody that can. They're trying to buy 20 truckloads, 100 truckloads. One guy told me this morning he sold 300 truckloads yesterday to 4 people, and there's just a panic. Some of these big contractor yards are finding that they've got builders that have orders that they got pocket orders of builders saying, I want to get covered. To go, well, can't do it right now. The market's up $50, so you're not covered like you thought you were. So it turns out the builders were basically short this market, and that's why they weren't really letting on what they were doing, because I don't think business was as bad as you see. I saw a thing yesterday. The DR Horton said there, year over year Q1 sales are down 38%. Well, that's phenomenal. I guess that's scary, but when they put that number out, they only had 20 days of work done in the first quarter. So you really can't call that a year over year, quarter over quarter kind of number. That's more just a beginning of the year fluke kind of thing. But
yeah, no doubt, Master. When we look at your forecast, 12-month forecast here, help me out here. The blue line, I want to see that thing go up a little bit more. When is that going to start moving?
You will today. That's the Monday.
So, going into this, when you and I were talking back at the end, weeks 49, 50, you were saying, hey, look, it's going to happen at some point here. And it looks like it's happening in spruce right now. So, Russ was on last week. He mentioned to us about how the cost had come down a little bit. Hey, Jared, welcome from Minneapolis. How the cost had come down a little bit, but it looks like the production cycle up in BC is starting to adjust more where the costs are, where they're starting to ride the clutch on some of their higher cost mills and really figuring out how to maintain the best mills, run the best mills, et cetera, right?
Yeah, and the interesting thing about this whole what's going on right now, futures has been the magnet that's been pulling spruce up, and everything else has just been kind of getting it in tow. But it's not, even when you talk to people today, there's still product around for quick shipment. There's a scattered truck or scattered car or cars that are ready to be loaded. And I mean, West Fraser just went from yesterday having prompt wood at $40 cheaper than they did this morning, and just in an afternoon, they're out 2 weeks. And do the math on this. To have prompt wood on when you come to work in the morning, and you end the day with a 2-week order file, how much wood have you had to sell in that day? Theoretically, 200% of your production, and that did not happen. You can't write up that many orders in a day. So this, once again, I want to warn everybody that not to get sucked into the order file, but the shipment file. But these mills do not have 2-week order files from 1 day's worth of sales. It's just physically impossible to do that.
So interesting thing, Matt. We have 4 new guys sitting here, and I talked to them about the market. And the interesting thing, as we went from our sales meeting this morning to listening to the phone calls, I go, the interesting thing about this market as you move down, Holly from Columbus, Ohio. How are you, Holly? As you move through the supply chain, like Matt, you and I get information pretty quickly, generally. We're talking to contractor yards in Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska, Florida, and a lot of them didn't even know there was any closures yet, right? And the reason being is because a lot of brokers are out trying to buy a lot of the product, right? before they now I go, don't worry, it'll filter back to your customers. And then an hour ago, people started calling back, logging on the platform to buy stuff, right?
Yep.
But it just the information is just starting to get out there. So for everybody, especially Matt's crowd that gets on here, if you follow Matt, this isn't surprising you very much about the buy, but there is a bite in the market right now. What will happen with that? I don't know, but it certainly has been probably one of the bigger moves in the last, would you say 6 months, Matt, to the upside?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Which
and it's kind of like getting is, the impetus to this whole thing is not the whole market. It is 3 yards. I'm going to tell you, BFS, 84 Lumber, Carter Lumber, were all underbought. And they've been leaning inventories through January, and not to much to their surprise, their builders started showing more inquiry, and I think it happened all at once. And it is just like, I've been saying this for months. You take these 3 big guys that throw in there, Home Depot and Lowe's, and you've got 5 companies that can spin this market on a dime. And that happened this week, even without Home Depot and Lowe's, because market's been in investment levels for several weeks, and brokers have been, and people looking to buy wood and invest in lumber have been on the edge of their seat, ready to do something. And now when prices are up $50 or so, and it's still a relatively good value, but people are putting wood in speculatively, which they haven't done all year long or even through the fourth quarter. And so this is that inventory build that we typically get, starts in November. It's just happening. It's getting crammed into a smaller time frame. It's got to happen between now and March. So we're just kind of running out of time.
Shoot, Matt, you have a bunch of people on here, Matt, today. We got Brian Okonek from North Carolina, Tom Baldwin from Wichita. Hey, Tom. Kevin Connolly, South Carolina. Jarek Hope, is that Fort Wayne? Holly Sievers from Columbus. John Breckenridge from the Hoosier State. So, and Jared from Minneapolis. A bunch of your people are getting on, Matt. So, I mean, that's awesome. Great following. Talk to me a little bit about your price guide. What have you been finding out there? What have you been? What kind of feedback you've been getting, Matt? Because,
everybody's just like all year long. Everybody's caught up in the moment. I mean, we've gone from afraid to have wood to, and I still think there's a little bit of a fear of uncertainty about how good this market really is, because you look around, like you just said a minute ago, you look around, 9-foot studs you can't get because we talked about it 2 or 3 weeks ago. If 9-foot studs at $250 are just no brainer, you just got to buy them and hold on to them. And now we're probably up $100 or so on those in just a couple of weeks, and they're hard to get. Euro wood selling, but there's more Euro coming. Spruce traders are concerned that there's enough spruce coming at the docks that it's going to be able to take care of any shortage that comes up in BC. And actually, the reason the market rallied, I think, today and yesterday was you had a West Fraser announcement from curtailment and Canfor announcement for curtailment, and Toco's additional. So you got the big names that turn people's heads attention, and all they think is curtailment. But you think there's things that are good. There are curtailments that start in 2 weeks. There are curtailments are going to run. Well, Toco, for example, is already down, so it's going to continue to run. But Canfor starts in 2 weeks. So they've got all their rough dry to run. Then they've got the stuff that they've got planed that's already ready to ship. Their shipping department, sales department isn't going to go away. They're just going to curtail for, just not make additional production for a couple of weeks. And that doesn't mean we're going to be running out of wood. So there's not going to be a shortage of wood, of actual supply between now and March, because this is a preparatory cycle. So the market's going to get, if we keep doing this, the market's going to get overbought, and we're going to set ourselves up for a sharp whiplash back down unless there's something significantly changing in the housing sector and demand sector. And that's a possibility. That kind of feels like that's in the works, but at this point, it's still a risky call.
So I'd like to know in the comments from some people watching, if they could put in there, just without giving too much information, what is your business like? What type of business is it? Are you catering to mainly small independent builders, large tract builders, all the above? And what are you seeing? What's their pull like? What's your feeling? And Matt, I know, real estate is so regional, right? When you talk about it. So I could tell you, we'll switch a little bit over to the real estate side. I've seen this just big desire to figure out what's going on in housing right now. And honestly, it's all over the place. You've got people sitting with sub 3% mortgages that people are saying aren't going to move, et cetera. One thing I've learned is people move because they move jobs, they get divorced, there's life changes, whatever it is. In the average, I think over a 20-year period, people only stay in the same house 5.6 years, right? So I think you're still going to have movement. People retire and they want to move. What I'm noticing is the existing inventory, no surprise, is down because nobody wants to put their house on the market. I know in our neighborhood, when somebody does, an open house is like a feeding frenzy. It's like a friggin' graduation party. There's cars everywhere, and they're getting, if it's a decent house, they're getting offers. And new home builders are giving decent incentives, whether that's price cuts or buy down. So I think the housing's going to be okay, and I think we're just kind of working through some a hangover from $7 trillion in the economy, but we're gonna work through it. What's your thoughts?
Well, depending on which camp you're in, I mean, it's hard to find somebody that could tell you that'll come on the record as saying that housing is that housing is overbuilt. I mean, almost without exception, everybody says is kind of unanimously in agreement that the housing market is underbuilt and undersupplied. And if you watch mortgage rates or mortgage applications a couple of weeks ago, there was a big surge in mortgage applications because the rates were down 1/4% on mortgage rates I think it may be down 0.5% over a 2-week period. But, when we were 3 and 4%, nobody wanted them. You get to 6.5, and you pull back 0.5 point, and all of a sudden you get a flurry of business. And to me, that's kind of telling that the market doesn't have to have 3% interest rates. It just needs to come to grips with what we have and make it work. And wages are still going up, and there's plenty of jobs around. And I agree with you. I think housing is going to be surprisingly better than the builders expected it was going to be this year.
Here's the crazy thing too: is I like watching that little ratio between multifamily and homes, and I'm not smart enough to get into this whole rent equation between rent and ownership. I kind of get it, but multifamily just keeps freaking climbing, doesn't it? It just keeps.
It's actually slowing right now. I've heard from probably the last couple of months more people putting projects off, and I think some of it is because it doesn't pencil, but I think there's also a bit of a concern about possibly being overbuilt or adequately built for the time being. Because if you keep on doing multifamily like you do, and then single family starts to surge up, I've seen smaller house plans, smaller lot sizes, less amenities, that kind of thing, trying to get people into homes. A lot of build for rent properties that are a lot of people, builders doing like subdivisions of 250 homes, all for rent, that are all pre-sold. And there's backlogs of business that's been put on hold from the fourth quarter. So I just think even without any new home sales, there's plenty of business to left over from the from fourth quarter from 2022, and for the build to rent market is going to and repair and remodel is going to give us a little push.
So Jarek from Do It Best was saying the most exciting it's been in weeks, maybe months. Fun to sell some lumber again. No doubt, Jarek. Brian, component manufacturing excitement is building again. So that's great stuff to hear. I mean, look at, like I said, we were in such a lull, or it felt like such a funk for a while. It feels good to actually get back into a little bit of activity again, right?
Yeah, and here's what you guys can take from what's encouraging. Those comments to me are invaluable, because you get buying groups, component manufacturers, retail yards, wood preservers, everybody saying the same thing. And one of the things that I use for a monitor of a bullish or bearish market is if there's wholesale or widespread participation in the event that's happening, whether it's liquidating inventory, building inventory, and clearly right now the market is in inventory accumulation mode and everybody's involved. So I mean, industrial this is probably actually maybe half of last week, but this is probably the first full week where we've seen everybody go all in.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think one of the hard things is from being, being in the industry for a while, I got a little salt. Somebody said salt in my beard now. In my head, sometimes I think investment levels are still what I thought they were 10 years ago, right? Like the $350 range. And it's like, I have to always remember how costs have gone up, right? and
Yeah.
we always in these heads. So, Alobar, I think he said from YouTube, was asking, what are your thoughts on homeowners moving to remodeling? Repair is a way to improve equity or at least have their home sell before they go underwater. Follow up is, how does this affect clears and shops? I don't know about clears and shops because I don't trade them very much. Maybe Matt would know more about that, but I think homeowners are probably constantly remodeling and repairing. As we always say, repair and remodel consumes more lumber than actual new home construction. So that is a very interesting one to watch. And before their homes go underwater, I guess the way I look at it, people would probably be moving to repair and remodel right now because they don't want to move to a new home and they don't care if they go underwater. Not that they don't care, but they want to stay in their house.
Yeah, and here's the thing you got to take into consideration. If you bought a house last year and you were on a waiting list for 9 or 12 months and you paid $70,000 to have your house framed, and now it's cost $10,000 to get your house framed, I'm not going to say if you panicked and bought your house at a time when you were just thinking there's not going to be any houses forevermore, you shouldn't be surprised when home prices increase 20% a year. If you got to give 10% of that back, that's not unreasonable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Inflated home last year, everybody's home value in America on the average is probably going to go down just because it was overinflated and it wasn't talking about unsustainability of higher $1,700 prices. You can't get $400 a square foot in Atlanta very long, or Dallas or Charlotte for very long, but you may get it once or twice, but that's not the going rate. So the cost of building a home is going to be less. So naturally it's, prices there's going to be some attrition, but I don't know we're going to fall out of bed just because of supply. So I wouldn't really, if you're going to move out of your house in the near term, a year or two, that might be something to consider. But if you've just gotten in it, you're probably going to be okay over a 5 to 7 year period.
I won't say his name, but I have some buddies that text me during this show too, and he goes, there were a few smart buyers out here that put 10 weeks plus wood on the ground and on order before this, which is true. I think Matt and I were just talking about some of the other bigger companies that weren't as astute at that, because there were some buyers out there that were doing that, and it was
our recommendation in December was to cover through February.
Yeah.
And in January is to cover through March. So just to be ahead, because prices were low, things were kind of building, and the worst case scenario is nothing happens and you're sitting there with what you thought was 2 or 3 months worth of wood. It turns out to be 6 months worth of wood. So that's at $350, $400 FOB mill. It's not a deal breaker. You're not going to win. You're not going to lose because of your price. You're going to lose because of your service. And I think that price only comes into play when you get marked up $100, $150, and there's some room to the downside, and you're going to get squeezed a little. But still, having the wood is going to be the most important thing for the builders, because if the builders are just waking up and realizing that it's going to get a little better a little sooner, then that we could be back in a pandemic kind of thing of the builders saying, "Don't run out of wood," and we know what happens when the buyers, the contractor yards, get the all signs are go signal and buy all you want.
So Matt, I wanted to jump over to something also, and I need to dig into it more. What do you have, a roundtable coming up, or maybe tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, tomorrow we're having it's going to be our second, but we're going to do it once monthly. It's going to become a monthly thing. It's a dialogue between builders and contractor yards, builders and lumber dealers. and other people that are, if that's not what your business is, you're invited to tune in and listen. But you have to be a subscriber to either Layman's Lumber Guide, the forecast, or the scouting report. You can scouting reports you can get for free for right now. And if you wanted to come to this the roundtable tomorrow, you have to be on that mailing list. The way to get on the mailing list is just go to laymansguide.com/scouting report. And if you sign up for the scouting report, you'll automatically get included for the roundtable.
Matt, I think if for people that haven't been on these, I've sat in on some of those calls, and I mean, there's some pretty good information that comes out of them, right? Your people are pretty open talking about stuff.
And I think by them doing it, it makes it easier for other people to do it and realize you're not giving away secrets. You're just saying, like, here's what I think. Because if I'm in Omaha and you're in Wilmington, North Carolina, our markets are completely different. So what I tell you is it might be helpful for you to know what's going on in Wilmington and Omaha, but it doesn't necessarily mean that your species that's using are the same, the dynamics are the same, the demographics are different. But it's good to hear from when you hear that happening, hear people from 15 or 20 different places all over the country talk about it. You can really get a good feel for what's going on.
It just so everybody knows you're not required to say anything, but a lot of people like talking about stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, so you're not going to be. If you're somebody that's normally shy or doesn't want to do something, you can sit in and pick up a lot of information. If you like talking, you can talk.
Last time, I bet 75%. I think we had about 30 people. About 75% of the people didn't even turn their camera on.
Which is fine because they were absorbing the information. And generally, when people talk on it, they're pretty astute, and what they say isn't just bloviating. It's pretty damn smart. I like it.
Yeah, and it's people that are convicted enough to, if they're convicted enough to say it, they're probably convicted enough to be able to. They're talking a position, so you can tell that not only do they believe it, they've invested in it. So it gives you some confidence to follow through.
Maybe some of the listeners can chime in on this one too. One thing I heard in the last 2 or 3 weeks is I have to look up my grammar here. Some of the other items that were normally hadn't come down in price yet for homes we're starting to see a little bit of give. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've heard. I don't know if you heard about it. Supply chain globally seems to be oversupplied. The supply chain still is getting better. I mean, you hear about. I mean, nobody's complaining about trucks anymore, and I've even seen rail cars in the South at mills that need to load cars, and that's kind of rare because you don't usually ship a bunch of cars in the mill because they mostly use trucks. But when you got extra rail cars hanging around Southern Pine Mills, that kind of tells you something. We haven't had a big freeze up in Canada that's slowed the rail. I mean, the railroads are slower with shorter trains, but they're not stopped like we've seen in the past. So logistically,
well, I could tell you from our standpoint when we're matching trucks in the platform right now, we load all the freights into it. You know, we're seeing rates now from the south to the north. I mean, Florida to the Midwest at sub $2 a mile, right? Where we were paying $5 a mile a year ago. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're getting from parts of Florida to Chicago at $2,200. I mean, that's back to so the good thing about that is wood, and yeah, Nick just put $1.50 a mile up there. Jerry, good morning from California. How are you doing, Jerry? Good to have you on here. So what I'm saying is, as the price of lumber goes up in some places, the logistical part of it, and I think a lot of people don't take this into consideration. A lot of times, brokerage houses and all that, they make a lot of their money on the freight side of it. If you're dialed in pretty hard to it, right? So
we used to make all of our money off freight back when I started.
So you're going from a $5 miles in some cases 6 months ago to $1.50 a mile. You can move lumber a lot of places a lot farther. So as Matt was saying, when you have wood in places in Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, North Carolina, South Carolina, I just went like this, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Texas, it can really move into different places a lot more efficiently when freights are a lot cheaper. So it opens up a lot more value for people also and a lot more opportunity.
Does anybody know what rail freight's doing? Because it's kind of interesting that the truckload rates are going down there. Like I just did a little quick math, $1.50 and $5 is about a 60%, 70% decline in freight rates, and container vessel rates are down like 90% from their peak. And but rail rates are still, if rail rates are not coming down, then that's going to make truck rates of particularly Southern Pine going north even more competitive.
No doubt. No doubt. We're noticing that. And like I said, freight has opened up. So it really gives a better opportunity for stuff on ports, pine mills all over. And so if, make sure people are quoting you the right thing based on freight, check on stuff, because freight is really helping us right now. And it's a great deal. Well, Matt, look, it was awesome having you. We're up against a half an hour here. Hopefully people sign up for your guide so they can get on your roundtable tomorrow, because it's well worth doing. Otherwise, we will look forward to seeing you next Thursday at the same time, 12 Central Chicago.
If you guys are interested in doing that, I'm going to send out the link for the Zoom call in probably about 2 hours, so that you got about 2 hours to get signed up if you want to do that. So
sounds great. Thanks for taking the time, Matt, today.
have a great day. Thank you.